Upper Echelon is brought to you by Deloitte for innovative thinking and thorough strategic planning. Turn to Deloitte. Mike Solomon is our man in the Upper Echelon this day. And it's been an interesting career. Mike hit the front pages due to what he's been busy with on Wesizwe, and we'll touch on that in a little while. But Michael, just going back a little, you've been in mining, starting off with Anglovaal as a mining engineer. What attracted you to that side of the economy?
Well, Alec, I was in mining a hell of a lot before that. I was born and bred in Stilfontein and the gold mines there. My father was in the mines and he was part of the development of Stilfontein. My family before that came from Kimberley. So mining is in my background and in my blood, and it was, it extended into my own career.
Interesting, Anglovaal. We were talking about it the other day. What a tragedy in many ways. They had fantastic assets in that company, and it kind of all fell apart.
It is a great company to work for, which is also good. It is quite different as a mining house, and it is much more of a family-run mining house than the other companies. But it is a great company to work for, and they had very, very, very nice assets. And
what happened there, Mike? How did they let it all drop?
I think that Rick, it happens. You had the Hersofs and the Menels, and the fathers built the company, and it changed generations. And Rick and his generation had different ideas as to how to take the company forward, and whether those were the correct choices or not, is a matter of opinion. But
bit of bad luck as well. Remember, they sold the cobalt operation in Zambia right at the bottom.
Yeah, it's it's very difficult to criticize, but I think that there was they had a change of strategy that may or may not have worked depending on what their own personal ambitions were. But it's a pity. It was a great company to work for, and I enjoyed it while I was there.
Well, Patrice Motsepe is certainly reaping the rewards of all the hard work that was put in by the Hersof and Menel families back then.
He most certainly is, yes.
And people like you as well, because it wasn't just Anglovaal. Then you moved into political activism. Now that's an interesting part, because from being involved in a mining house, then to running a JSE listed company, in between there's a part of your life where you changed or wanted to change the world.
Well, I think I was at university in the mid-70s at the height of student activism, and I think that had a lot to do with the way that I looked at the world and the way that I looked at the mining industry. And so having come out of WITS after the changes and the excitement of the mid-70s and going into an industry that was clearly in transition and had to change, but the politics were, after June 1976, the politics had to change and were changing very rapidly. And so I spent much of the 80s in the industry, first of all with Anglovaal, and then later with Stephen Robertson and Kirsten and Bateman's in the contracting and consulting side of the industry. And as the politics started to change, I got involved one way and another in the debate around the transformation of the industry with people like Paul Jordan and Magnus Eriksson from Sweden, Joachim Malloy and others, within the Minerals and Energy Group of the ANC, and later with the Minerals and Energy Policy Centre. And so it was a fascinating period where you were looking at an industry that was effectively the cornerstone of the modern South African economy, and having to look at political transformation had to go with economic transformation. And so the challenge really was to take, particularly within the Tripartite Alliance, a number of different viewpoints as to how the industry would change, to develop a strategy and then a policy, and that policy finally came into law much, much later with the Minerals and Petroleum Resources Development Act. And so I spent that period with the Minerals and Energy Policy Centre, then went back into industry. So having started with industry, on the mines, going into the more technical side of the industry, then into policy, and then to come back as a miner, as a chief executive, was an interesting process.
The whole Wesizwe story has been extremely well documented, and anybody who wants to know more about it can just Google on MoneyWeb and away they go. But the lessons that you might have learned from the controversy you had to deal with, the hard work in putting a mine together, and perhaps the satisfaction of looking back and knowing that it finally all did come together.
I think there are a number of different dimensions to that. If you look at the project technically, it is a highly successful project. We started off from exploration. We had a very, very clear plan of action, which we stuck to rigidly with the reverse engineering philosophy that we employed, and we were able to very quickly, in the space of 4 years, go from first exploration to bankable feasibility study. And had it not been for the global financial crisis, things would have been very different. But we were on the point. Well, because we tabled our bankable feasibility study in March 2008, and we had then appointed lead financial advisors to look at the equity raise and the capital raise, and obviously there was a project finance component and an equity component to that. And so we were a long way down the track in terms of getting towards our capital raise when Lehman Brothers hit. And so,
and then it just evaporated.
Yeah, it evaporated. Now, had Lehman Brothers not happened 3 months later, Wesizwe would have been a very different story, because we would have been able to secure our project finance. Hopefully, because things were flying at that stage, our capital raise had gone well. The share price at that stage was between 7 and 9 rand, and so it wouldn't have been that dilutive to raise the equity side of the capital raise. And the mine would be built now and in operation. But the fact is that the project finance and the world changed overnight. And so we were in limbo for a year or two before we got back on track. And the politics in that period changed around Wesizwe.
So it was a question of timing. Things, though, your hand, if you like, was changed dramatically. They took back your 5 good cards and gave you 5 pretty scrappy cards.
It was a difficult, you've got what I think is a great project, and on the cusp of succeeding what we'd set out to do, and the rug is pulled out from under one's feet. But then we got weaving pretty bloody quickly and recovered that situation with all the drama that went around it.
And the whole Chinese approach, why go there? Why not go to traditional finances of mines in
well, because there weren't any options. Immediately after Lehman Brothers and the global financial crisis, there was a period of a hiatus where nobody really knew what was happening within the world. Project finance had dried up for mining companies, particularly early-stage mining companies. People were reluctant to go into growth stocks because cash was king in a recessionary environment. And if we had a choice of either taking the company forward and looking for where we could find money, which was China, or potentially trying to sit it out and perhaps not surviving the hiatus. And so we took a decision. We went to China. We sold the company in China, and the rest is history. We brought in $887 million, and part of it in equity and the other in project finance. And the project is now fully funded, and construction is underway. So as a technical project, it is a highly successful project.
It's very interesting, that point. Talking with Neil Pretorius from DRD, he also tried to go and sell part of his operation, Blayfours, in China, and was totally unsuccessful. So there isn't an indiscriminate policy from the Chinese of just buying anything that moves.
No, I think that there seems to be a view out there that the Chinese will pay top dollar for anything. This is not the case. They're very, very canny business people. They know exactly what they want, and they're hard bargainers. And so it's not the case that it's easy to raise money in China. They want value for money, and they know what they're looking for.
Mark, since leaving Wesizwe, what have you been keeping yourself busy with?
Doing things that I enjoy. I've been doing a lot of teaching at universities. I have an association with WITS, and I've done some programs at Gibbs, and I've done a lot of work at the World Economic Forum around mining dynamics and policy. And these are things that interest me and are part of my own progression and my own life. And so I've taken, I think, a fairly well-earned breather from the industry, and have spent a sabbatical of the best part of a year doing things that I enjoy doing, and I guess ultimately I must drift back into industry.
The knowledge that you gained through your engagement with the Chinese, and indeed bringing one of the few Chinese or successful projects funded by Chinese into South Africa, does that not give you an opportunity to maybe apply that knowledge, apply that experience?
Well, it does, obviously. clearly to have actually succeeded in attracting the attention of the Chinese in a very, very competitive environment, because after Lehman Brothers, the whole world went to China, and so that one was up against a fair amount of competition. And you talked about Neil Pretorius looking for DRD. And so the fact that we were able to communicate with the Chinese and to appeal to give them a value proposition that appealed to them means that we did something right. And so obviously that experience, the relationships that we built up over that period, hopefully in future will stand me in good stead in whatever else I do. But if one looks at the economic symbiosis between Africa and China, and particularly within the resources sector, China is very much a reality in Africa, and so it makes sense to stay with an environment where I have relationships, I have a certain amount of knowledge and comfort, and could be of use in the future. What course that will take is of course yet to be seen.
So you're still catching your breath, as it were, and see how those things develop. Mark,
I think so.
Just broadly, because there won't be too many other people in South Africa who've got your insights into this. The whole discussion about nationalization of mines, we get some people within mining saying it's your fault, you haven't done enough. We've got other people saying it's absolute nonsense. Of course, you've got yet another category, the youngsters in the ANC, who are saying it must happen tomorrow, if not yesterday. What do you think is likely to occur on this front?
I think as a point of departure, one can't necessarily confuse logic with politics. The fact is that there's a perception out there, both within government and within a large portion of the population, that the mining industry has not succeeded in distributing or redistributing the benefit from the industry as widely as it should have. Now, whether this is the case or not, one could argue that empowerment has been successful. One could argue that it has not been successful, and it really is a question of the eye of the beholder as to which. But the truth lies in the perception, both within government and within a large proportion of the population, that not enough has been done. Now, at this stage, it's academic as to what has succeeded and what more needs to be done. I think that if one were to stick to the original charter and the conditions of the charter, that I think that most of the mining companies will, of necessity and survival, achieve the objectives laid down for them within the constraints and the framework of the charter. But that is not the issue. The issue is that there's popular dissatisfaction with the degree of benefit that is perceived. And I think if one looks at the ANC Youth League document, all 23 pages of it, and if one can cut through the significant rhetoric within the document, there are a lot of important points that one must actually take cognizance of. And that is looking at broadening the base of the benefit, the whole question of increasing the fiscal capacity within the country and the role that the mining industry plays within that, the questions of skills development and broader benefit. Industrialization comes up time and time again. And so if you read the document clearly, in fact, there are some fairly interesting points that come out of it. And it's anybody's guess as to which way the nationalization debate is going to go.
So it's that close?
It's about politics right now. But the industry, I think, is going to have to look very carefully at what has been said, and is going to have to be proactive in looking those realities in the face and say, well, we've got a year to contribute to the debate. The politics, and I think that there are two streams over here. The political direction will take its course, and what happens in the 2012 elections, I think, is going to define one way and another which way this thing works out. But it's not good enough for the industry. The industry have got to look at what the key issues are and respond to them, and be proactive in responding to those issues.
Mark Solomon, political activist, mining engineer, recently stepped down as chief executive of Wesizwe, expert on China, and as you've heard, he knows a bit about the nationalization debate as well. He's our guest in this week's Upper Echelon, which was brought to you by Deloitte. For innovative thinking and thorough strategic planning, turn to Deloitte.